See, after all the struggles to keep the nation afloat, Mexicans now are going to have to deal with the French coming in to take over their country. So Mexico was a very vulnerable country in the 19th century because they had to deal with the French occupation. The French are going to be coming in to take over Mexico. And in the 19th century, you can see that Mexico is going to be invaded by two very powerful nations, the United States and France. Napoleon III invaded Mexico while the United States was preoccupied with its civil war. Let's go and appreciate a film clip on the French occupation, Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo, or the 5th of May in English, is a celebration of Mexican heritage. Over the years, many people have come to believe that it marks the day of Mexico's independence, and that's, well, just wrong. The 19th century was particularly brutal for Mexico. After a bloody struggle to win its independence from Spain in 1821, the fledgling country fought America from 1846 to 1848, and then a civil war beginning in 1857. These conflicts left Mexico's economy ruined and its army exhausted. The nation had accumulated war debt and just couldn't repay its European backers. Mexican President Benito Juarez declared a 2-year suspension on its loans. That news didn't sit well with England, Spain, and France. So in 1861, those nations planned an invasion, but France wasn't out for just reimbursement. Napoleon III wanted to overthrow the Mexican government and install a French monarch in the Western Hemisphere. When England and Spain realized France's true intent, they withdrew support. Napoleon believed that Mexico was too weak to defend itself against his superior military. In 1862, over 6,000 French troops landed at Veracruz and headed toward Mexico City. But a surprise was waiting. Mexican General Ignacio Zaragoza and a few thousand militiamen waited behind fortified walls in the city of Puebla. The French marched into town on the 5th of May. The outnumbered Mexicans opened fire, killing 1,000 French troops. After a 2-hour battle, the remaining French retreated. Word of the victory spread throughout Mexico, and Zaragoza became a national hero. Later that year, the city of Puebla was renamed Puebla de Zaragoza, and Cinco de Mayo was decreed a national holiday. But Napoleon wasn't celebrating. Upon hearing of his army's defeat, he sent 30,000 more troops to Mexico. Within a year, the Mexican army was crushed, and Napoleon installed his Austrian cousin, Archduke Maximilian, as the nation's leader. Maximilian's rule was shaky from the start. Most Mexicans were still emboldened by the Cinco de Mayo victory and celebrated the holiday with songs and dance while under French occupation. Mexico's future president, Porfirio Diaz, led an uprising in 1867 that finally overthrew the French army. Maximilian was shot and killed. His bullet-riddled shirt is still on display in Mexico City. Cinco de Mayo had become Mexico's rallying cry. People remembered it with feasts, mariachi music, dancing, and picnics. The celebration continues today, both north and south of the border. In fact, commercial interests in the United States have made Cinco de Mayo very festive, even though many people aren't aware that the holiday is a tribute to General Zaragoza and his nation's resistance against foreign domination.
Okay, so Benito Pablo Juarez Garcia, this image that we have back here. He was a Zapotec from Oaxaca. He was the first indigenous person ever to serve as president of a country in the Western Hemisphere. And he resisted the French occupation, overthrew the empire, restored Mexico, and introduced land reform efforts in order to help the poor. Benito Juarez's liberal efforts to modernize the country challenged the conservative elements that sought a continuation of the old colonial system of casta privileges. Benito Juarez represents an attempt by Mexico to end the racialization process. Today, Benito Juarez is remembered as being a progressive reformer dedicated to democracy, dedicated to equal rights for his nation's indigenous and Afro-Mestizo populations. He wanted the lessening of political influence that the Roman Catholic Church then held over Mexico, and most importantly, he has defended national sovereignty. The period of his leadership in Mexican history is known as La Reforma, or the Reform. And his rule implemented finally the independence agendas of Hidalgo, Morelos, and Guerrero. And one of the reasons Cinco de Mayo is celebrated in the United States more than in Mexico is because of the Chicano movement of the 1960s and 1970s that deliberately used Cinco de Mayo as a means by which to remember an occupation and a resistance to an occupation. And the Chicano movement wanted to resist the occupation of the United States, the occupation of Mexico in the United States. And so Chicanos celebrated every Cinco de Mayo with a demonstration for the end of the racialization process, a demonstration to restore rights to all people of Mexican descent in the United States. So Cinco de Mayo is celebrated in the United States at least up until Budweiser and Corona beers took over the celebration beginning in the 1990s and now. But it is to remind Chicanos and Mexicanos of the commitment to liberation that Juárez engendered amongst the population. Cinco de Mayo is an event that all Americans should celebrate. All Americans should commemorate. We must commit ourselves to the struggle for human rights. We must commit ourselves to the struggle for human dignity. Benito Juárez insisted that we stay vigilant of our rights. Entre los individuos como entre las naciones, el respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz, meaning that amongst individuals as amongst nations, respect for the rights of others is peace. It is inscribed on the coat of arms of Oaxaca. In this course, we must give honor to Benito Juárez's vigilance. Now, what we need to appreciate is that between the U.S. Civil War and 1900,